Welcome everyone to week 2 of the Master Mini Class, Content Creation for Revenue Generation. I am really thrilled to have you here today. Super excited to share this piece of content with you and jump in. Before we jump in, I did want to do just a quick check-in. Anybody who wants to share from last week, any ahas or anything you've already started putting into action, just take a minute or two to do that before we jump into the actual content for today. Please just unmute yourself and let's hear any ahas, anything you want to share. All right, you're all being very quiet. That's okay. I want to make sure I'm giving time and space.
I'll say that Christine and I teach mindfulness and resilience and help companies with their cultures. And I can go through all of that stuff. And yeah, my aha from last week was that I really sell and guide the possibility of change, of different, of better. And that's what speaks to people's heart and mind and dreams, that it can be different. So that was kind of an aha moment, and I've been using that already with clients.
How's it going? How's it landing?
It's going well.
Yeah.
With people that know what I do, but then it's like, no, it's not just like the practice and what you have to do. It's like the hope. So.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. I love that. Those of you who are just joining, we're just doing a quick check-in to see if there's any ahas or anything that people felt compelled they want to share after last week's session. Welcome, those of you who have just logged in. So happy to see your faces. Anybody else want to share this morning? I always want to give a minute to let people share. Okay, then we are gonna dive into content. So give me just a second here and I will share my screen and then we'll get the presentation going. We are gonna start, by the way, on page 12. Actually, before I do that, I do wanna give you a heads up about something. Next week, at the end of class, there is going to be a special offer made for those of you who are in class. So that's coming. And it's going to have a very short window of time for you to take advantage of it. So I'm telling you now, in case you're going to miss next week, you're going to want to watch the recording pretty quickly in order to take advantage of this offer. And it's only going to be made, this particular offer will only be available to class participants. And like I said, for a short time. So that's my little teaser. There's something coming next for you. So I just want to give you a heads up about that. Okay. Let me share my screen and we are going to dive into the content. Lori, can you see my screen? Will you give me a thumbs up if you can? Thank you. I have to like close you guys out for the sake of the recording so I don't get to see your faces. Okay. Here we go. Content creation for revenue generation. Here is what we are going to, talk about this morning. So today we're going to talk about the rule of 5, keys to clarity. I'm going to teach you a technique called chunking down this morning. And then we're going to talk about some content creation, some things that you should be thinking about when you are creating content. So first, let's jump into the rule of 5. And we're going to start on page 12 in your workbooks. So if you don't have your workbooks open yet, you might want to open them to page 12. And when I think about the rule of 5, and these are fill in the blanks here for you, anytime you are demonstrating or teaching, you can change out those words, by the way, for a lot of other things, talking about, saying, right? Like you could put anything there, but anytime you are doing something that is around a concept, the same concept for 5 separate people, it is an indicator that there is an opportunity for you to turn this into content. So that's my rule. I like to do things in 5. Those of you who know my Strive 5, you know that 5 is, for whatever reason, it's a number that hits home for me. So anytime I teach something 5 times, it becomes content. Anytime I say something 5 times to 5 different clients, and especially the stuff that really resonates with them, that's going to become content. So my rule of 5 is based on the above criteria. The content that's created is stuff that I charge money for, and I make it into an offer. That means I put it out into the universe in some way, or out into the, to my list or whatever. So I'm going to show you just a couple examples of things, because I want to start, the idea here is to maybe get your juices flowing on what are some of your rules of 5, things that you've already been talking about or things that you say. But really it's like, I'm going to say more than say. I'm going to say demonstrate and teach. Like when you're really breaking something down and you do it 5 times for 5 different people, this is an indicator, like there's content there for you. There's an opportunity there. And it's usually content that you should be charging money for. So here is just one example from my own work, the selling staircase. This is an early version, but it's not the first version, by the way. So you see it doesn't look the same as what I teach now, because it's evolved over time. But this concept originated in a VIP day with a client many years ago who was a high visual learner. And she had some bad kind of sales coaching in the past, bad for her, didn't really resonate with her. And she was really struggling with this concept of moving somebody like through a process. And so that was the first time that I ever think of it like a staircase. And your job is to move your clients from step to step to step. And she actually then pulled out this notebook that she had, and she drew this staircase. And we sat there and labeled out all these little steps. And the original version, I should see if I could get it from her. She may not have it anymore, so many years ago, but it had 11 steps to it, right? And then I started kind of paring it down. And the more I talked about it, the more it then became what it is today, which is these 5 steps that I've clarified. But even if you go back and listen to 2 summers ago, I was on a podcast being interviewed, and I was talking about the selling staircase. And even then I didn't have it as tight as I have it now in these 5 steps. So once I got this became what I started teaching, which then ultimately became the book, right? Now this is content that I sell, is the book. And I teach this obviously in many different ways, but that's just an example of something and how it's evolved over time. And the reason I'm showing you some evolution is because I want to make sure that you're giving yourself permission for things to evolve over time. And it's okay to start now and start charging for it and make changes as you go along. So here's one more example. Here's something that I started coaching clients on a long time ago, which was getting rid of this "I help" phrasing, because it makes you sound like everybody else. Everybody talks about who they help. So I started teaching people instead talk about who hires you, right? So this became something that I would say over and over again with clients, and it definitely counted as a rule of 5. So I ended up putting it into a form of content, which now is known, today is known as what I call the wise words. And I teach a whole section of wise words and how to take really standard phrasing that everybody uses and make it more impactful with the people that you're in communication with. So this is again, an example of a rule of 5 that has completely evolved. And now this is a whole section in the language of sales. It's also a section that I have added into emails that convert. And I just added this in this last year. So this is just to say, when you start paying attention to your rules of 5, look for places where you can put it in and charge money for it. That's really what I wanted to hit home here as far as the point for this. Okay, so I want you to take a minute, or I'm going to actually give you a little bit of time here. How much time am I going to give you? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. I want you to think of as many things that you think qualify as your rule of 5 in the next 5 minutes. So I want you to take, like I said, 5 minutes and do this, and then we're going to come back and we'll talk about them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you all. What time is it? It's 9:10. So we're going to come back at 9:15. If you have a question for me, post it in the chat box. Please keep yourself muted for these 5 minutes, and then I'll open it up to Q&A and kind of ahas from this in just a few minutes. All right, go. Okay, come on back. How did it go? Anybody have some new ideas? Anybody willing to share? Yeah, Karen, hi.
Hey, how are you guys all doing? Yes, for people that don't know me, I write about Uruguay, a small country in South America, as a great destination to travel and live. And I sell books and I have a website. It made me realize that it's only recently, after having the website for 6 years, that I've actually been answering people. This is all explained in my guidebooks, and here are the links when I actually answer comments. And it's only just recently that I've actually, instead of like explaining and then saying, oh, PS, you could buy my guidebook, now I literally am like, you need to buy my guidebook for this information.
I love that. So smart. I would even go so far as say, like, this is answered for you on page blah, blah, blah in the guidebook. Here's the link for it. Like, make it super easy for them to find their answer once they like purchase it. If if that makes sense for you.
That is great. I've actually done that if people have contacted me directly recently, but not on the website, in the comments. I'm totally going to do that.
Yeah. And you might even go back and add it into the comments, because people who maybe didn't ask the question but are reading the comments might go like, well, I'd like to know the answer to that. And then it's like, how can you make it so easy for people to take that next step? So break it down for them. And that's for all of you. When you think about when people are asking you questions, it's totally fine to say, like, that's something that we would work together in a strategy session, or that's something that you'll find the answer to in this training. This is the section where it is. Or in Karen's case, there is a really great answer for that in the guidebook, and it starts on page 13, right? Like, just make it so crystal clear on how they can get their answer.
One thing I've come up with that I'm thinking, how could I do that? Well, two things. One is that I get a lot of questions regarding helping people with their itinerary planning. And so it's really making, and that's been mentioned to me before, actually in a Biz Chicks Live, that maybe I should consider charging for that. But I've never had anybody actually reach out to me and say, I want to pay you to plan my itinerary. And I'm often in this situation where I feel like readers don't want to pay for stuff.
Some readers don't want to pay for stuff, but some people will pay, right? So you could have, maybe you do put together some type of an itinerary planning training and you sell it. And it's like a pre-recorded, here are the things, here's like, answer these questions, and based on your answers, here's where you're going to find sections in the guidebook to get your answers, right? Or it could be something that you do as an opt-in that leads people to buy the guidebook, or you offer it like, you guys can be in the Sales Maven Society and get your questions answered. But if you want every question tailored to you, and you don't want to have everybody hear your questions and hear the answers that I give, you have to pay me to do that. And that's why I started offering strategy sessions. Like, I didn't offer strategy sessions I think even 2 years ago. It wasn't even an offer in my business. And now it's a huge chunk of my business of how many people pay me to do strategy sessions. So if you're getting asked to do that, just throw out a number and see what people say. Like, yes, we could get on a 45-minute call and talk through your itinerary, and I'll give you some suggestions. And here's what I charge to do that. Only if you want to do it. But
I love doing that kind of thing.
yeah, so offer it. Put it out as an offer.
Hey, Karen, could I offer a suggestion, Nikki?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of some of the magazines that I used to read when I read magazines, and they would, like, so Midwest Living, for example, they put together itineraries for their readers that say, if you're coming to this place, here are the things that we recommend you do. And I see that being a free thing that you do. Like, if you're coming to Uruguay, here, you could put different itineraries together for different types of travelers, and then you could use that as advertising for the people who are already paying to advertise with you. Say, like, hey, I want to include you in this itinerary and suggest that people come visit you. Are you willing to pay me to have your shop or your restaurant or your hotel or whatever featured in this itinerary?
So good. Love it.
Thank you.
Who else? Anybody else have a question or an aha from their rule of 5? Maureen, and then Casey.
Right. So I actually, very funny, I just finished an article for a big company that asked me to sort of break down what I do into 5 things. And then I started making a list of all the other lectures and things that I've done, which is, 5 tips for this or 5 that or 5. So the 5 actually was perfect. So now I just have to figure, now I just have to incorporate these into something people could buy virtually rather than buy, just attend a lecture by me. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I years ago put together and I did it in about a day and a half. I put together first I taught something live, right? So I taught it as converting consultations into paying clients. I taught it live. I taught it in it was like a 3-hour mini masterclass, and it went over really well. And so then I decided I needed to have a virtual training. So I took that training, broke it into 3 videos instead of, which now it's broken into a lot smaller chunks, but I broke it into 3 chunks, 3 videos, and started selling it on my website. But where I really sold it was it became the low cost offer when I would go and speak. And I had these big grand gesture, big goals in mind. I was like, I'm going to make 30 grand off of this, converting consultations into paying clients. And I think the first year I made 8 grand, but if I hadn't had it, that's 8 grand that I wouldn't have had to my business. And then those people did pop out and become paying clients in other areas. So probably I've made more than 30 grand off of it if you count that. And it still sits up on my website today. You can buy it. And I just had this happen 2 months ago. This almost never happens, where I had 3 people buy it. I don't even know who these people are. They just went on there and bought it. I don't know how they even found me or anything. So, and it, like I said, it only took me about a day and a half to put it together and shoot the videos and get it loaded. And it was worth it. Casey?
Well, I already have a book, which I am not really good about promoting it, but so for my rule of 5, what I focused on is the book is obviously it's what I service my clients in, and the book just goes through the concepts that I use to service clients. So for my rule of 5, what I pulled out is when I'm working with a client, the most ahas that I get, because there's certain sections of what I do for them, or certain sections of the book where they get the most aha from, oh wow. Yeah. So I'm wondering, so some of the things I'm considering now that I know these areas where people get the most benefit or the most value from, maybe maybe it becomes a workshop, like a 1-hour workshop or a strategy session or, yeah.
Yes to that. If you're not sure, just put it out and test it and see, will people pay you money for it? I mean, that's the other thing about when we're talking about content creation for revenue generation, like sometimes you just have to put the offer out and see if people will sign up for it. And once you teach this type of stuff, like especially in a workshop, once you teach it, you'll know like, well, that didn't work, or this worked really well, or this piece needs some adjustment or tweaks. Like I've taught these master classes multiple times, but I change them every time, and I change them based on the piece that I like, or like I didn't have the rule of 5 in there for the last 2 times that I've taught it, but it's something that I talk about a lot with clients. So then it gets put into the workbook. So give yourself that flexibility. But again, a lot of times you won't know what's really going to work until you put the offer out. And for those of you who aren't going to put trainings together and things like that, that's totally fine. It still can be something that when you pay attention to it, that you either work it into your package or you talk about it in when you're putting stuff out into social media. And we're going to talk about this here in just a little bit. We're going to talk about free content. So just things for you to think about around that. Susie, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to come to you now.
Unmute here. Well, all the things that I listed are components of behavior consultations that I do. I just find that no matter what the problem is, there's always some same commonalities that I cover. So in a way, this is stuff I'm already charging for, but I'm wondering how I can break out tiny little topics. So it's not really enough. Each little thing isn't enough for a workshop or anything, but do you have any micro ideas?
So right off the bat, what comes to mind for me is, could these be opt-ins to build lists, to move people into a paid thing? Or could they be things that you sell? Like you could create it as a PDF that you sell. Or you put them all together and you put it in a book.
Awesome. So like lead magnet type things?
Yeah. Lead magnet, which then could be, paid. Like people sell downloadable PDFs. Like you could sell those too on your website if you wanted. If they don't want to pay you for a consultation, you could charge, whatever you want, anywhere from, it doesn't even matter, $1 to hundreds of dollars, right? Like anything in between. And you start to see what your sweet spot is. And then as you start to create these if you created multiples, you could have here's a price for one, or here's a bundle price where you get them all.
Nice.
And that's something that you can promote, at certain times. If you want to do a special offer out into the market, like buy the bundle today and get it for the price of 2 of the PDFs, or whatever you want to do with it. But
perfect.
Again, anytime when you're creating this kind of stuff, there is opportunities for you. Not that you have to sell everything, but there is opportunity for you to sell this stuff. People will pay you money for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, I'm gonna say one more, and then we're gonna keep going. I feel like I saw 2 people. Amanda, were you giving me the yes?
I just had a quick question, but I can ask it in any part here.
Go ahead.
Okay, just is there the possibility that we would have too many offers if these are some version of webinar, digital training? What else do I have here? Like a paid workbook, like a PDF, ebook, or something like you're saying. Like I'm looking at all of these things and they're related, but they're still very unique technical sections. Is there an overwhelm for somebody coming and they've got 5 options rather than just 2 or 3 core things?
Yeah, so when you're making an offer and you're having a conversation with somebody, my suggestion is you never offer more than 3. So you pick what are the 3 best solutions for them.
Okay.
Now, could you have multiple things up on your website with multiple offers? Yes, but I would put them in different sections. Like I wouldn't put like a buy page that has 80 things, because then people are going to be like, what?
Yeah, okay.
It can feel overwhelming. I'm not an expert on this, so too, I just want to clarify that we might have some experts on the call. So if you have a suggestion for Amanda, please put it in the chat around that. But I think you could have these in different forms. You just put them in different sections in the website. if that's how you want to sell them, or you put them on Amazon or whatever.
They would make sense in different sections for different lines of services is really what they are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Christy, I saw your hand went up and then I didn't want to not call on you.
There we go. Oh, it's great. Not related to the content, but I don't know. Do you have people in a waiting room for if they weren't on right at the beginning? Because Maureen Kura's email or texted me she can't get in. Okay.
No, Maureen's on. I can see her.
Maureen Kura's?
Yeah.
Oh,
thanks, Christy. I got on.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Nobody should be in a waiting room. Were you in a waiting room, Maureen? No. Okay. All right. Good. I was like, wait, what? Okay. Let me jump back into the presentation here, and we will keep going. Okay, please turn to page 13, and we're going to talk about the keys to clarity. When you are delivering information out into the market, my suggestion is that you deliver it in bite-sized chunks. So this is also referred to, and this is something a client named. She calls it Nikki's Just One Thing, because one of the pieces that I'll often see when I'm coaching clients is I'll go like, you got to break this down. Like, give them just one thing. And if you're not, like, sometimes we want to give people everything. Like, we feel like they need to know everything. But if I sat here right now and said, like, I want you to know everything that I know about creating content and how to turn it into things that are going to make money for you, at some point you guys would get full and you wouldn't be able to hear anything that I am saying. This is also why I ended up deciding to break this masterclass into minis, into two-hour sections, to give you enough, hopefully, to get you going, get you excited, but not so much that you're like, I feel so overwhelmed by this, I don't know what to do. So when you are putting content out into the market, especially when we're talking about newsletters, blog posts, social media stuff, think about, can you give them like just one thing? What is a bite-sized chunk of information that will be interesting for them, that will allow them, and this is where we're going to move into chunking down here in just a second, but it's super important that you don't give people everything, because you know so much, right? And you are an expert in your field. And if you try to give people like everything you know about a certain topic, it's like fire hose. And I can be guilty of this. I don't mean to fire hose people, but sometimes I do. And I have to like take a step back and go like, what's one thing I could give somebody in this moment that would help them in some way? So people like when you give them one thing. It's also a lot easier for people to take action on. Okay, so let's talk about chunking down here. And then I'm actually, in chunking down, as I explain this, before I'm going to give you implementation time, I'm going to open it up and do some Q&A with you, because I want to give you some time to ask me questions before I send you to do this. So I'm giving you that ahead of time as I start to jump into chunking down. Chunking, by the way, is an NLP term, neuro-linguistic programming. This is something that we learned how to do in my NLP training. There is something that's known as chunking up, there's chunking sideways, and there's chunking down. I teach oftentimes chunking sideways in Storytelling for Business, the Masterclass Storytelling for Business, and I teach chunking down when I'm talking about content creation. And there are times where you can actually use this technique in many different areas of your business, but for the sake of today, we're looking at it from this aspect of putting content out into the market. So chunking down is narrowing down your focus to a subset of a topic or category. It's moving from being general to more specific, breaking a topic down into bite-sized chunks of information. The idea is it's a way to give someone a taste or a sample of your work or a concept. That's what chunking down is. And I'm going to show you some examples of this too. So the idea is that clients are able to experience and or implement small steps or wins right away when you chunk down for them. The more you can chunk down for people and they can start to implement and see wins, and actually take steps and put them into your business, the more effective your work becomes. The easier it is for people to talk about it in the market, the easier it is for people to get results, because they don't know all that you know. If they knew all that you knew, they wouldn't be hiring you. So we got to chunk down for people. Oftentimes, when I do this with my private clients and we start to chunk down concepts for them, they're always so surprised at how specific I get down into this one thing, just one thing, which is why now people call it Nikki's Jot, because I say it a lot. Just one thing. Just give them one thing. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself to begin this idea of starting to chunk down. You might ask yourself, what is this an example of? What's an example of whatever this overarching concept or topic is? What are examples of this? That is a way to indicate oh, here are some ways that I can start to chunk down. Or you can say, what is one part of this? Or you can answer these questions: who, what, where specifically. The key word in that section there, specifically. The more specific that you can be when you chunk down, the easier it is for you to put a concept out into the market. It also allows for you to have more clarity when you are putting something together, because you're oh, this is just this one concept. I don't need to convolute it with a bunch of other things. An example, one time I wrote an article about storytelling for your business, and I realized that I gave here are 5 key things that you need to do in order to be effective at storytelling for your business. And when I look back at that, I'm I could have written probably 10 different articles and just shared pieces of it, and it would have been easier for people to okay, I get this. All right, so let me show you some examples of chunking down. Then I'm going to open it up to questions, and then you're going to have time to implement. Okay, so you take a main concept, and in this particular case, the main concept, I'm just going to pick one. So I'm going to say, here's a concept I talk about a lot: telling versus asking. So now I'm asking myself, what specifically, who specifically, where specifically, or I'm asking myself, what are examples of this topic, or what is one piece of this concept? And so I can look at it and go, okay, well, telling versus asking, one of the things I often talk about here is, are you talking at people, or are you talking with people? And giving examples about that. Another jot would be a section where I have wise words, and how I talk about there's a difference between saying to somebody, I would appreciate blah, 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 insert whatever, versus would you be willing, blah, blah, blah. And the difference between that. That's something that I could put into just one piece of content and put out into the market. The other thing, telling versus asking, I could talk about how this is making deposits in rapport bank accounts. You don't need to know all these. If you haven't heard me talk about this stuff yet, it's irrelevant. What's relevant here is that I'm just chunking down and pulling out of telling versus asking different areas that I could go to that would be just one thing. Or it could be, you're causing people not to buy. And I could write a whole article about this. I could teach a whole class about this. I could put some content out into social media around this. This is chunking down this concept of telling versus asking. Now let me show you one more. This one might seem pretty recognizable to those of you who've worked with me for a while, the selling staircase. So I talked about it earlier when we were talking about the rule of 5. So the selling staircase can be broken down, chunked down into a lot of different just one thing. So it could be, I could talk just about funnels versus the selling staircase and what's the difference. I could talk about one piece of the selling staircase, which is the discovery step. I could talk about how people are skipping steps in the selling staircase, or I could talk about how the selling staircase is now a book, right? And I could, obviously I could do more chunk downs from here. And as a matter of fact, one of the other things that might be useful for you to look at when you're chunking down is to actually chunk down even more. Okay, so you have the selling staircase here. And if I want to look at each one of those jots, could I break those down into smaller sections? And in this particular case, I really could. This would not take much effort at all in order to do. So I could talk about pre-framing and how it relates to the discovery and how it relates to the selling staircase. Or I could just talk about pre-framing. And then under discovery, I could also talk about questions, the questions that you ask. I could even, just so you know, I could chunk further down on each of those. So pre-framing, I might be talking about, I could do something around safety, or I could do something around the things that you put in a pre-frame. And around questions, I could actually give a specific question, or I could talk about how questions and how they relate to building rapport in a conversation, right? And then with the book, if I wanted to chunk down from the book, I could talk about the audio version of the book. So this is that chunking down and giving just one thing. And again, you could probably see here, maybe, because I know these concepts really well, I could continue to chunk down from here multiple times in each one of these little jot boxes. So before I open it up, it's going to be your turn here in just a second. And before I open it up to implementation time, which I'm just going to put this up mostly because I just want you to see this like super cool, my little guy here who I think is really cute. Can you guys see him? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to come back and I want to open it up to Q&A. So if there's any questions about this chunking down before I give you time to actually go and do this on your own. So let me stop share and I'm going to come back. Okay, now I can see you all. All right, does anybody have a question about chunking down or what this might, and please just, so what are you chunking down, Casey says. Thank you, Casey, for helping me with this. You could go back and look at page 11 from the workbook that we did. This was part of last week where we talked about your ideas when you answered your idea list. So from your idea list, you could take one of those concepts and use it for chunking down.
I have a question, Nikki.
Yes.
It's Casey.
Hi, Casey. There you
okay,
are.
I don't know if I don't know what you're seeing on your screen.
I can see you guys now.
Okay. So here's kind of where I get stuck with content.
Okay.
I have too much.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Gotta chunk
I don't
down.
know where to start. So I just kind of shut down, and I'm like, ah. So do you have advice or suggestions on, like, if you have so much content that you can or should be putting out, is there a helpful place, thinking from like your reader's perspective or your audience perspective, is there a helpful way or a helpful place to start?
So my answer to that question is going to be, think about the things that give people the biggest ahas and start with those. Because those are the things that people are more inclined to want to pay you money for. The things that are like, what? Huh? I don't know this concept. I also think for you, Casey, because I know in your book you have things broken into these certain sections, and I want to say, is it 3 or 5 segments?
In the book, there's 6.
But also in the when you go
to work with me, there's 4 phases.
4 phases. Thank you. Okay, so maybe you take like, what's the most impactful phase? Start with that as your overall topic, and then start chunking down. What phase is it?
1. Phase
1. So start chunking down phase 1, and again, you know, I put some places for you to chunk down here in the. But you could actually, just so you know, you could go. Let's say you fill up. I cannot get my pages to turn. Hold on. What the heck? They're like stuck together. So let's say that you do this first one and you go phase 1 here, and you chunk down, chunk down, chunk down. And then you take this and you put it here. And now you chunk down from it further.
I love that.
Okay? And you just keep going. Like, you could then take another one from a box and chunk down further and just keep chunking until you can get down to where you're like, this is the bottom. This is it. This is one thing. Okay. Who else? Question, comment about chunking?
I have a question.
Yep. And then Lori, I'll come back to you. Susie, go ahead.
I'm just a little unclear on where this is all leading or the purpose. So are these chunks supposed to be chapters, or like you said, articles, or units in the video, or?
So they could be anything, really. It depends on how you want to grow your business. So for me, one of the ways that I use chunking down specifically is it gives me concepts for my blog/newsletter. And my blog/newsletter then becomes content. We're going to talk about this next week, but then that becomes content for social media. It also becomes content for the Sales Maven Society, and it becomes content that I often then take and put into another kind of a training in some way. And then it becomes something. So what happens for me when I really chunk down, a lot of times I'll write an article and then I'll do something else with another piece, and then I'll combine them again and make them into something else. So we're going to talk next week about recycle, repurpose, reuse. Sorry, Susie, what?
Oh, I'm sorry, I talked over you. So
no, I talked over you.
Little building blocks that you can do anything with, it sounds like. That.
Yes, anything. And all kinds of things. Now you get to pick, right? Like some people are not writers, so they're not going to write a newsletter. Or some people might be thinking like, I'm not putting content out to the market, but you are probably putting stuff on social media. So for you, this could just be stuff that you use for social media posts. You know, we actually have a super Pinterest guru on the call with us today. So Amber could take this and put this into all different types of content for Pinterest, right? Her chunk down. The more that she can chunk down, the more she can break this into individual content and put out in, I'm like acting like I know Pinterest. I know Amber's business a little bit because she's a VIP client, but you know, there's a lot that can be done for the type of business that she's doing. And when I think of like Susan, who's an expert when it comes to interior design and paint and color specifically, like she could be chunking down and talking about color, and this could be stuff that she's putting into social media, but it could also be something that maybe she puts it into a piece of marketing material for her clients when she goes and does an in-person meeting, or it could be a PDF that she puts together as a leave behind for them, right? Like, and so for you, Susie, this, again, same thing. I could see you doing this for social media. I could see you doing this as PDFs that are available for people who don't want to hire you, but do want this help. You make them available. They have to pay you money for them. And at some point you combine them, and maybe it becomes a course that you turn into Train the Trainer. I don't know if you have any interest in doing that, but.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else question before we give you some time to start working? Okay, then we are at, let's see, where are we on time? So here is what I would like for you to do. I want you to do at least 3. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. No, I'm going to give you 15 minutes because I feel like you could probably get further, but if you're struggling with it, then send me a chat. But I'm going to give you 15 minutes. So we're going to come back at 10:03. Okay? Okay, if you would indulge me and come back because I want to answer and dig into some of these really fantastic questions that you guys have today about this. So I'm going to start with Susan's question where she says, how do you keep from giving too much away? I find people don't value things when they don't pay for them. Also, should you stay clear of proprietary insight and information? So Susan, let's talk about this a little bit. first initial answer is, how do you keep from giving too much away? This is one of the reasons why you do chunk down, and because you don't need to give away the overarching concept, but you can chunk down enough where you can give away. And I am going to talk about free content next week, but you can give away like your juiciest stuff in a jot, in a just one thing. Like, this way you don't give them everything, but you give them something that like they can go like, oh my gosh, that's so good, because then they often do want more. And the other reason to jot is because you don't want to be people to just be able to take every single thing that you do and implement. But back to your point, people don't value what they don't pay for.
Mhm.
I 1,000% agree with that. And so what happens a lot of times when you give them just one thing, if they can even get like a little bit of success with some piece of it in some way, then it does build your credibility, and it makes them go like, what else does she have? And this is why it's okay to really like chunk down when you're putting content out. So I want to clarify that I do look at this as two different things. When I'm putting content out into the market, I will give away what I think are some of my juiciest nuggets. When I do not give away juicy nuggets is when I'm doing discovery calls with people. I do not coach on those calls. And the difference is, when I'm putting content out into the market, that's like me putting content out into the market. When you're on a discovery call, it's a real conversation back and forth. And then people start wanting to ask you like for specifics around their particular issue. Now you're coaching. They should be paying you money for that.
So how do you stop that? Do you say that's something that I would do on a one-on-one call? And if you want to pursue that going forward, I'll be happy to work with you.
Yeah. So for me, when somebody wants to like dig into something that I put out into the market, and they're like, can you tailor, and believe me, I do get asked to do this all the time. Like,
Yes, so do I.
Yeah. So could you tailor this specifically for, for this thing that I'm working on? Or how would you say it if you were me in my business, right? Like, I get asked that all the time. So my response is, yes, I can absolutely do that. And that is something that we would do in a strategy session. Let me know if you'd like me to send you the link to get yourself signed up for one.
Okay.
Like, I'm pretty, like, I'm not coaching.
Yeah, I want to be polite and nice about it and build rapport, but I get asked all the time, oh, can I just pick your brain?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even joking. I'm gonna do this starting in 2020. I'm gonna have what I call flash 15-minute sessions with me, because I get asked so many times a week, like, Nikki, could you just give me the answer to this? Or could you just tell me how to say this? And oftentimes I will do that with my paying clients, like in the Sales Maven Society. I'll say, post that question. Like, people will send the question to me privately because they don't want to post it in the group. And I'll go, post it in the group and I'll answer it for you, because you are a paid client and there's a way for you to get that answer. And if they're like, well, I don't really want to post it in the group, then that's why I'm going to put up a 15-minute, like, here you can have a 15-minute session with me and there's going to be a fee for it. Because right now my boundaries are so like they're squeezing in and I need to start pushing back, right? Like, I just don't have enough room to breathe every week because of how many people want like just one piece of advice. Could you just help me with this one thing? So if you're getting that a lot, give them a way to pay you for it. So that's what I'm going to do starting next year. You're going to get a 15-minute flash session with me and it's going to be $195. I'm dead serious about it.
Yeah. Then one other question I had was, do you try and take whatever question you get and steer the answer to one of your jots that you're willing to give away?
Yeah.
So you sort of massage it, even though you may not directly answer their question, but you're going to lead them to just one thing that, and let's say you have a half dozen of pieces of advice or strategies that you are willing to share. But when somebody asks something that's more targeted, do you try and steer them to what you're going to give away?
So I would say one of the ways that I will answer that question is I'll say, you know, there's, I've been interviewed about this on podcasts, and I have a page on my website that has all the podcast interviews. If you want to go check that out. Like, I'm not going to do all the work for you. Now, if I have an article, sometimes I'll share, like, I wrote an article about this and here's the link to it. Or it depends on, I guess I'm going to say, do what feels right for you, because it's also okay to say, like, I wrote a chapter about that in my book and it's available on Amazon if that's something you're interested in,
Okay.
right? Like, it's totally okay to say those things. So when you're getting questions are things that when you are answering a question to one person, not to like a mass of people, that stuff people should pay you money for. I really do feel that way. So that's my answer.
Okay, that's great.
It's okay to give juicy, like, just one things away to a mass audience, but tailoring it and letting people like dig into it with you, they need to be paying you money to get those answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oops.
Okay, let me see who's next here on questions. I feel like Maureen Taylor said, how narrow should I be your topic for just one thing? I have two. I think I answered your question, Maureen, but if not, would you tell me? Where'd she go? There she is.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Okay, thank you.
I have a tendency to start broad, and then I think I need to chunk down.
Yeah, every time you're feeling like this is a broad subject, chunk down, like as much as you possibly can. Let's see. Christy, you said I struggle a bit with some of the parenting topics. Okay, so I think it's okay to say, like, here are 5 reasons why you shouldn't use Elf on the Shelf. Like, I think that's okay. But if you feel like, one of the things I will say about that is if you feel like the article is too long, chances are you can remove a lot of it. And I know this because you and I do this a lot in the society, where you'll post something for me and I'll take out big chunks of things that you will write, and like we'll make it a shorter response. So like learning to be able to do that for yourself, of like pull some of that stuff out. Like you don't always have to justify. It's okay to give like, here's what you shouldn't do and here's why. But if you're feeling like you're having to like write a lot of justification around it, I think sometimes that can cut into your credibility a little bit. If you feel like you're always having to justify your answers, like, here's my answer and here's why. You don't really need to say, like, based on my, all of this and then this study and that's, like, you don't need to pull in all this other stuff, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have a tendency to, I like to write, and
you're a good writer.
I get a little verbose sometimes.
Which, it's okay, but it can overwhelm people,
Yeah.
or it can cause them to not want to like dig in, because, everybody we like fast.
Right. Yeah. Quick. And that's my concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I love that Amanda is now using jot as a verb too. You make me so happy, Amanda. Okay. Lori had a question for me about custom. Lori, can we talk about this a little bit?
Sure. What I meant by that is, so I'm a professional genealogist, and when I do client projects, it's extremely custom to the client. So it isn't something that really lends itself to creating content for sale, because and the difference in genealogy is I'm serving people who do not do their own research. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of hobby genealogists out there who do their own research, who use Ancestry and do all the same kinds of things professionals do. But I'm specifically targeting high net worth clients who want their family legacy researched, and they're really willing to pay a professional to do it. So they're not somebody that I want to sell, genealogy how-tos to.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a how-to.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, can I just throw out like some ideas that I have for you?
Sure.
For jots. So think about the results that people get, and how they might use those results. Those could be jot type things for you. So whether it has to do with health, like how, and you could tell stories, right? Like here's a client that we were able to, I don't know if health is even, I just totally just made that up, Lori, because I don't know much about genealogy. So,
Okay.
so maybe that was a terrible example on my part, but so maybe it's something about like, I guess it's more like, what were some of the professions, right, of your ancestors? And
Okay.
talking about how maybe knowing this about yourself allows for you to have some new awareness around maybe some of your own traits and why you lean more towards one thing versus another. Like that, and that in no way is telling any how to. It's more talking about the, I call this the so what, by the way. So it's like, so what does this mean in my life?
Right, right. Yeah, all of that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't see it as something I'd monetize. I see it as something that builds credibility and interest.
You don't have to necessarily, okay, well, when I say not every piece of content has to be like the content itself doesn't have to sell, but what I would want you to use the content is to drive people back to hiring you.
Right.
To do this for them.
Right.
That's the piece where you put content out. So this is the same for you, those of you who are using this just straight for content out into social media. It should bring people back to want to hire you. That means you do need to have some call to action in there. Like to learn this about yourself or to learn this about your own family history, here's how to get this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. Let's see. I think that is anybody else who didn't put a question for me but has one they want to talk about. Or I would also like to say any ahas that you got from doing the chunking down exercise. Please just unmute yourself. Amanda, I see your hand. And then Nikki.
I think mine's probably pretty basic, but this is something that comes from my hashtag all the things swirling quick start brain. But this is a great way because I'm pretty visual too. So this is a great way, I think, for me to be able to plan out sequences of stuff. Because like I want to do all of the things. And so if I were a podcaster, it'd be a 7-hour podcast, and that's not a thing. So I can totally see how this could be how I could get to the place where I could see myself doing some of those things, like writing weekly blogs, because that's one of the most overwhelming things I can even think of, even though I do love to write and I do love to impart information. Anyway, so it's a good strategy, and it's a good method, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, so I also use this, just so you know, like I also use this when I'm putting together like the idea of a training. Like if I'm going to put together a training or a workshop, for instance, this was all chunked down of what you guys are getting today, because the overarching content was content creation for revenue generation. And I do this exact process when I'm coming up with like, what are the sections? And then what am I going to put in the section? Because otherwise it will be like fire hose training where you walk away and go, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I got. So I use this for trainings too. Nikki, I saw you unmuted and then I want to call on you. Yeah.
Thanks. So this was a super fun activity. So I know you and I have talked about it before, and then Casey and I and another group have talked about it. I, like Casey, just have so much content. So I have what I call quick take tools that I've been developing over the last 5 years, and they're PDFs that I develop on a single topic. And I usually use them for a foundation for a conversation when clients ask a certain question. And so I just grabbed one of those and I chunked it down into 5 separate sections. So that was really like super helpful to see how I could take the disciplinary action quick take, which I thought was quick, but I was like, no, there's like 5 other ways I could break it down, because when clients come to me with an employee discipline or, behavior, whatever problem, I go through all of these other things that aren't even on the quick take just naturally, because again, you know your stuff.
Yeah.
So I was able to take that one topic, which I thought I had broken down, and put it into 5 more. Like I could peel that out into 5 different quick takes instead of the one.
That is phenomenal. So what are you going to do with it now?
What's that?
What are you going to do with it now?
So, well, my Colby, who said something about quick start? So I'm a researcher, so I'm going to try not to research it. Because I already know it. So I'm going to try to just take action and make it into 5 other quick takes. And then usually the quick takes I actually do use as free downloads in my blog posts.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're giving away too much. It makes sense to break it down into the 5 separate sections. So when I blog about having an employee discipline meeting, or that's my article for the month, then it's just a small part of the larger framework for having an effective employee meeting.
Yeah. And so there was a question, I think Casey asked too, that there is, when you are really breaking stuff down, it's good to have some language around it for the client to know that there is more. So this is the first piece, or this is step 3 out of 5, or whatever. Like you break so that you that's also known as planting seeds. Like you're planting seeds of like, ooh, Nikki's got more. Like I want more from Nikki. So I need to hire her or do a session with her or bring her in, right? I also am thinking like, because I know you've been posting right now around doing employee handbooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much you could chunk down around employee handbooks.
Oh yeah.
And then all lead to hiring you to come update people's employee handbooks.
Super fun project.
Yeah, cool.
I bet others would get excited about an employee handbook.
Thank goodness for people like Nikki in the world who just get excited about employee handbooks. Okay, any other question, comment? Okay, I see Susan and then Karen.
I'll say hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just wanted to offer that this is how I approach all my client interactions. I haven't yet, started doing anything on social media with newsletters or anything like that. I'm still building foundations and establishing relationships, seeds. But the core of everything that I do is being able to step into someone's process wherever they are, and then immediately figure out where they are in the process and then what the next steps are for them. So I'm doing this today after I leave here. I have a consultation, and the topic and the thing that I'm going to address with her first is because she's building a huge house and she's overwhelmed and her taste is lovely, but she has no idea where to start. So we're going to start right at the beginning, and her design sequence is going to be with starting with her white. Let's go. We're going to go either with warm white or we're going with a cool white, because that will drive every following decision after that. And that's going to eliminate at least 50% of the mistakes you could make. So then we can now chunk down from that. So that's how my brain works naturally. So for me, it's so nice to see that, yes, this is a thing. You've provided the framework for it. You've validated the fact that this is actually something that is doable and implementable. And also put some structure around it for me so that I say, oh, look, this is actually how I can do this. And then when these things do turn into content for whatever I want to put out there, this is hugely valuable to me, especially at this moment when I'm about to go do a consult with the potential for an entire home, which would be the biggest job I've actually landed yet. So this is perfect for me. So thank you. So
You're welcome. And what a really, you always say things so beautifully, and I love this about you. You're so good with language and words, but when you hear Susan talk about like somebody feeling overwhelmed, and then she just goes right to the heart of the matter and talks about picking a white, like I felt like I could breathe better. Like, man, if someone had said that to me, because I would feel this would be super overwhelming to me for someone to come in to want to, help me figure out I would not know where to start. But you giving me this like, okay, Nikki, the first thing we're going to do is pick your white. I feel like, I can do that, right? And so that's how you want clients to feel when you're chunking down, is the like, oh, I can do that, or oh, this makes sense, or oh, this is going to be useful to me. In that, so oftentimes, and this goes back to my training in neurolinguistic programming, most of the time what keeps people stuck is they're looking at like such a big picture that they don't know what the first step is. And so one of the reasons that you chunk down is to help people get like, here's that first step. And when you can help people get that first step, then they're likely to take the next and the next and the next. And that oftentimes means continuing to work with you. Maybe it's them going out and doing something on their own, but usually it's like, okay, if you can get me through the first step, then I'm comfortable with you walking me through this process.
And
So,
it's stressful, it's expensive, they don't want to make mistakes. And I'm super excited, especially because the services I decided to offer early on were things that a lot of people, I hate to say laughed about or kind of poo-pooed, but I kind of took a different path. And I just wanted to do it my way. I'm a very my way person because I believe in the way that I would want to be treated and that's how I'm approaching everything.
yeah.
And twice in the last 24 hours, 2 new calls said to me, you are providing the service that is exactly what I was looking for without realizing this is what I needed. This is exactly what I needed at the time that I needed it. So I'm so excited. And I really think that my journey with you and the society here has really allowed me to get here. I'm here because of all the foundations that I built from all the things that I've learned here and from all the lovely people that are on this, in this society. So I just wanted to share that because it's exciting to me. And that's how I'll be using the chunking today.
You honor me, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Karen, I saw you have something.
Yeah, I mentioned that my newsletters are super long, and I guess I need to chunk them down, but I don't want to go from monthly to weekly.
Why would you need to? You could still do monthly. Well, okay, now if you're one of the ways you can chunk down, I saw a great example of this yesterday. One of my clients who's in the society, some of you guys know him, Brad Kruger. He's amazing. And his business is Rainy Day Resilience. He put out a newsletter yesterday, and I will say it was very long, but one of the things that he did is he broke it into these like bite-sized sections, these chunks. And so it made it really easy. I was super impressed, and I don't read very many people's newsletters, mostly because I don't have time, and mostly because most people's newsletters to me are just like, look at me, and I did this, and then I did this, and then I was so awesome here, and I'm like, that's not interesting to me. But his was, it was chunked into these like really great sections. So I would say, if you know you want to put out a long newsletter, start breaking it into sections. Make them really clear, distinct sections. And that'll make it easier for people to, it's more palatable, it's easier for people to digest.
Okay, good. I do that already, so that makes me feel better.
Yeah, so it's okay to have a long newsletter. It's just making sure that you're breaking it into, like, people can scan and get the piece that they want. So that means using headlines. That means putting boxes around it or whatever that means. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, anybody else that hasn't got a chance to speak up yet that wants to? Otherwise, we're going to keep going. All right, give me a second here. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so we are going to start now on page 16, talk about different types of content. Now, I'm going to give you a list of, potential, but my guess is that I don't have every single type of content out there on this list. There's probably some that you see right off the bat that you're like, oh, this is, and write it in, right? That's okay. But just to give an idea, when I think about content, the things that I look at are blog post, newsletter, which to me are the same. Like, I don't write a blog post and then write a separate newsletter. It's the same content. Video series, social media posts, your ebook, or you could also be your opt-in offer, your lead magnet, workshop / workbook, a training course, content for private clients, signature talk, podcast, book, product, like whatever that is for you. But these are different types of content. Now, when you're going to put content out into the market, there are some things that I think are really important to think about and pay attention to. And so that is, when creating content, one of the things that I want you to ask yourself first is, what's my desired outcome? Like, why am I putting this out into the market? Now, your desired outcome could be a myriad of things. It could be that you're doing it for list building. It could be to make sales. I hope it's to make sales, at least most of the time. It could be that being, visible, you want to be of service. It could be building credibility. There's a lot of reasons, but if you're not taking that time and thinking about your answer to this before you put content out into the market, then I want to caution you to take this one little step back. It's a little step, but really start to think about this when you're putting content out into the market, because some of you have probably heard me say this about 1,000 times. I love this quote, Lewis Carroll quote. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Like, just putting out content with no real purpose, it's not in your best interest, and can be a huge time waster. So when you're going to put out content, are you asking yourself, what's my desired outcome? Like, what do I want to get out of this? And of course, maybe you're thinking like, this is what I want the other people to get out of it. But there needs to be some type of benefit to you if you're going to put content out into the market. So I break this down, and this is one of the ways that I do it, is I do this little section where I go, okay, first of all, I'm going to answer like the jot. What's the just one thing? That's the content that I'm going to put out into the market. And then I answer, what's the type of content? That's the TOC there, type of content. And then what's my desired outcome? So here are a few examples, and you're going to get a chance to do this yourself here. So for instance, maybe I'm going to pick from one of the sections in the workbook where I chunked down. I might pick a jot answer here and say, okay, I'm going to talk about skipping steps. So how am I going to put this content out into the market? What type of content is it going to be? It's going to be a LinkedIn article. So if it's going to be a LinkedIn article, what's my desired outcome? Why am I doing this? And it might be that I am issuing an invitation to buy the book, right? That's the reason. That's what I want to get out of it. That's why I'm going to put this content out into the market. Have people buy the Selling Staircase book. Here's one more example. So for instance, I talked about breaking down one of my jots. My just one thing was wise words. So I might take one little section of my wise words and put it into a newsletter so my newsletters always have some type of a sales tip in them. So it's going to be a sales tip that goes out to my list. And I need to think about, what's my desired outcome in putting this piece of content out into the market that week. And my desired outcome is probably going to be leading people to register for the masterclass, where I dig into the wise words section. Okay. So those are just two examples, but I want you to come up with two now. So it's now your turn. So I'm going to give you, I think maybe 5 minutes. We'll see if you need more, but I want to give you 5 minutes. So it's 10:31. We're going to come back at 10:36. 10:36. So go ahead and go. Okay, come on back. And two of you put some questions in here I want to talk about, and then I'll open it up to everyone. The first one was Karen. Karen, let's chat about.
Hi, yes. I mean, I produce a lot of content, having a website, and so I often find that I have a very clear desired outcome when I start. But given that our website was redesigned this year and there are still elements that don't link as well together as I would like, I often end up, by the time I've got the blog post out and the formatting done, etc., I'm feeling kind of frustrated and just moving on to the next thing. And so then the desired outcome ends up kind of like getting left behind.
So I would say for that, it's probably worth it to slow yourself down in those moments and to take the 15 minutes or half an hour to figure it out. Like, is my desired outcome clear in here? Is this going to get what I want now that we've done all this work? And I get it too, because I get frustrated easily and I want to move on quick. And at the same time, though, if you're going to take the time to put out content into the marketplace, let's make sure that it is getting, or at least has some type of relevance to your desired outcome, because otherwise it's just noise. And you don't want to contribute to just noise. That won't attract people to you.
Yeah, or in my case, what will happen is that people will, because I planned a beach series, and based on extracting sections of my book. And so, of course, at the end of it, I had two desired outcomes. One was to actually make sure that there was an invitation to buy the book to find out more.
Yes.
And then the other desired outcome was to drive traffic to the other beach articles. But I've just found that I'm feeling a little frustrated on the web development side. And I just, literally sometimes I'm just like, I'm feeling really irritated.
I'm sorry you're feeling irritated. And now here's the thing is, if the articles are out there and they're on your website, there's no reason that you couldn't maybe go back and put some tweaks to them. So if somebody finds it now, does it now have this adjustment to it that leads more towards your desired outcome?
Well, that's what I did in the end.
Okay.
Basically, I just thought, I'm going to get the damn articles out.
Okay.
And then I'll go in and sort the other stuff out after. But it's crazy, isn't it? Because, of course, the desired outcome is the most important part of this.
It is the most important part of this, yes. So this is why I'm bringing it into the room for us to talk about today, is because I think, again, oftentimes we forget it because we do get bogged down with technology or all the things as hashtag all the things, as Amanda says, like that can get in the way. And if you are letting these things get in your way, then oftentimes what happens is you're just putting noise out into the market and people won't pay attention to it. Right? So
they will, but I won't get my sales. And
but
then I
won't
won't
get your sale. And then, and it's like, well, that's nice. But if you don't tell people how to take the next step, oftentimes you leave them feeling unsatisfied as well. So we want to make sure that they know how to get that next step with you. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maureen, you had a great question too I wanted to chat about.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. So
Please ask your question.
Yeah, it seemed like when I was looking at types of content that to have a jot, for what I do, simple question about a photograph, put it in the newsletter, and then make it a masterclass. That seems straightforward. But somehow taking it just a little larger, like for me, creating a toolkit of things that people could use to work with their photographs, and then turning that into an ebook, is just the desired outcome the fact that they'll buy the book, or is the desired outcome creating the ebook and the jot something out, the TOC, like a social media push?
Okay, so the desired outcome needs to be yours, right? So think about like what do you want to get out of it? That's really the answer, is what do you want to get out of it? Like, don't just create content to create content.
Right. No. I never create content just to create content.
Yeah. But at the same time,
I create enough content.
you're
I'm
you have
content queen. Yeah, no.
okay. You and Casey and Amy, like you guys are all telling, like you have a lot, or Nikki, I think said that too. You have a lot of content. That's awesome. I have a lot of content too.
Yeah.
I think even Amy said on the call too that like she took all of her content and then put it into a membership site,
Yes.
right? Like and not that you necessarily have to know what all you're going to turn your content into today, but it is paying attention to your content. I also took all of my content and put it into a membership site as well, right? Maybe that is something you do down the road, but maybe there'll be something way better for you to do.
Mhm.
But as far as like, if you're going to create an ebook, I think you need to think, is the desired outcome to sell this ebook, or is it to drive people to take the next step with me, right? Like I've had an ebook that I have had out in the market for a long time. And one of the things I just realized like last month when I was going back through it, because how often do I go, like, I don't know about you, but how often do you go back through your content once you created it, right? That was me. And I realized like, what is my desired outcome here? Because it's missing from this ebook. So we have now, like I've redone it. It's actually being loaded like probably today to have a newer updated version of it to make sure that my desired outcome is happening when people download it. And I won't know that until I test it in the market, but at least I put some thought around, okay. And also my desired outcome has changed since I first created it.
Right. So my desired outcome with the ebook could be more people sign up for my consultations.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So make sure that there is a way for them to really easily from the ebook sign up for the consultation.
I have some updating
It can't just
to do.
it can't just be sign up for the consultation. Like make sure it's super easy for them.
Yeah.
So on mine, there's a place for them to like click and it takes them right to like, here's how you sign up to do a selling strength assessment. Okay.
I have some updating to do.
Okay, good.
Like a lot of it.
That's okay. Take one thing at a time.
Yeah, one thing at a time.
Just one thing.
Yeah.
Okay, who else? Question, comment? I see you guys have some comments here.
Question, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So this might be a little silly question. I am not a social media person, and I have this feeling like I really need to have a social media presence to be list building and doing what I need to do. So if I have a blog post, I mean, basically, what is a social media post? Is it like the whole blog article in a Facebook post, or is it just a link saying, hey, I wrote a great blog article, go look at this? But what's a social media post?
I feel like a social media expert probably is a better person to answer this question. So I'm going to give you my answer as not being a social media expert. I think you have to test and see what gets people to do what you want them to do. So I used to post a portion of my newsletter as a social media post with an image. And we have since started, like I've changed that, and now it's kind of the whole thing because it wasn't really driving people to go back and like read the article, which is what I wanted them to do, but that wasn't happening. Yeah. So now I just want them to get the tip, right? Or I want them to like at least see it and see if that then drives them to take the next step with me, because there's usually a call to action towards the bottom.
So what was your call to action if it wasn't to drive them back to the...
It's usually a call to action. If I'm going to write a blog post, a call to action is usually to either drive people to be a part of the Sales Maven Society, to do a selling strength assessment, to do a strategy session with me. Like there's some type of there's some phrasing or wording in there, and there's a link.
And I've seen it on your blog post, but
yep.
In the social media post, is it basically the same thing?
Yeah. There's some piece there where they can like click that link and go to the next step.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I feel like, I don't know, Amber, is this a question that you would feel comfortable like chiming in?
Yeah, sure. So I mostly work on Pinterest, but I do have some clients that I write their content for their social media. And so, for example, I have a client who's like a women's website for like middle-aged women. And so we will share links back to blog posts. We'll share fun graphics that get people engaged, like asking questions about what's going on in their world, what they want to hear from us about, things like that. And it was a lot of trial and error to see like what creates engagement. She has a private Facebook group. So a lot of, okay, we see a lot of people, they love to answer the questions like, what are you shopping for on Black Friday? Stuff like that. And then we see that certain types of blog posts, like business related blog posts on her website, get a lot of traffic. So it is a lot of trial and error. But it's kind of just refining it down to like, okay, we're getting a lot back from this. So it can be, she does a lot of short video. So if you're comfortable with like video, that's a great way, especially on Facebook, to get some engagement, is to do like a Facebook Live or even a pre-recorded video. So it really can be anything that your followers respond to is what I would like hone in on.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Who else? Question, comment? I feel like I heard somebody and then I lost. Marsha, was it you?
Yes, I've been trying to figure out how to raise my hand. So
You did it.
for me, I did it. So for me, first of all, I want you to know you are on top of an ice bucket leaning against a glass in the hotel room, which I thought was ingenious. Thank you so much. So I don't have my own content. So I'm spreading the word about my premium hair care. So I did get some awesome ahas today, however, and I so appreciate you. In the jots, so my jot was premium hair care. And then the content is a flash sale. And then my desired outcome, of course, is new sales. So I guess I don't want to get too bogged down in content is my thing. So I feel like I don't really have a whole lot to interject here as far as contact, but just take a little bit of whatever it is and then put myself in it. Is that what you mean?
Yes. And again, thinking about your desired outcome, making sure that you're asking yourself, by putting this piece of content out, by sharing something that the company's provided, is this going to interest the people who I'm putting it out to? And is there a call to action? Like, is this going to drive the behavior that I want? And if not, do I need to add some adjustments?
I see. Okay. Right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You look beautiful in that color, by the way. Gorgeous.
Thank you. That means a shout out for Lisa Fisher, my stylist. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yay!
Okay. Any other question, comment? We're in kind of the last few minutes here. So here's what I want to do before I open it up to any other questions. Would you please turn to page 24 in your workbook, and in section 2, under session 2, write down what are your up to 3 takeaways and one thing you're going to take action on immediately. And then I'm going to give you like a minute to do that. And then I'm going to come back. We'll see if there are any other questions, comments, and then we're going to bring today to a close. Okay. All right, so let's hear, I'd like to hear any additional questions, or anybody who wants to share their takeaway, or their one takeaway, or one action item, or one question. That's my way of trying to make sure I give time for everybody who wants to speak up and share today. If you haven't spoken up yet and you want to, please jump in here, or send me a message and I'll call on you, or raise your hand and I'll call on you, whichever is easier for you. I do want to hear from you if you want to be heard from.
My takeaway, I spent a good chunk of time after BizChicks Live, like planning my content for the first quarter. And I'm realizing that basically every topic could be broken down into probably like 10 topics. So maybe I'll have my content for the year. I don't know. I'm going to spend some time chunking that all down. So
good. I think you will find, Amber, you do have your content for the year. And how awesome is that to be like, hey, 2020, done.
Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome. Who else? Please just unmute yourself and speak up. Hi, Amanda.
Hey, I'm just gonna. I'm gonna do some serious implementation this weekend. But I think at first I'm just gonna copy the hell out of these pages, these chunk down to JOTs, and I'm just gonna brainstorm, because I have lists and lists and pages. I have written pages. I have a Trello board. I have stuff that I typed on my phone and then I printed out. I mean, I'm a total mess. So I think I'm going to consolidate all of my brainstorming ideas first, and then figure out, okay, just one thing. I'm just then going to jot my jots. And then for one thing, so just for the January newsletter and blog.
Awesome.
So I feel like if I can just stay focused on one thing with this method, this is the least intimidating way that I have ever seen to be able to just get started.
Good.
So, thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for saying that. You just totally made my day.
I just texted my partner. He said, "How's your day? What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm in a content creation class, and this is finally the way I can get out of my own way."
Hallelujah.
Finally.
Yay. Congrats. Thank you.
Yeah, I will report back and let you know for sure, but I am 99.9% sure this is it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, who else? Comment, question? Lori, hi.
I'm going to speak up. I want to speak up.
Okay, Marsha, go ahead, and then
I have to get out of here. I'm sorry, my daughter's waiting on the beach for me, so I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm always so inspired and hopeful after every one of these classes. So that's all I wanted to say. I just keep moving forward and I never give up.
You're amazing. Go enjoy the beach, my friend. Thank you for making time for us today. Appreciate you so much. Bye. Lori Nichols, my friend. Hi.
So I'll even call it, go so far as to say it's an aha, was being more intentional about the desired outcome. Because I've spent a lot of time and invested actually a good amount of Benjamins in the last 3 or 4 months just on the content calendar and getting some support for that kind of thing. But really it's like, it's being clear about what the desired outcome is. And I would even say having a more expansive view about possible desired outcomes. Not just a discovery call or not just, but it's just, again, a more expansive view of what is, what the potential desired outcomes are that would be valuable to me and obviously to the audience or the potential clients. So
Awesome. Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. How about you, Lori? I see you're unmuted. I'm just going to call on you.
Sure. I I would say that my biggest takeaway was that my opportunities for content in my type of business are broader than I thought. So that was a big takeaway. I had been doing some SEO training and I had been researching keywords, and I had found out, for example, that a lot of people are searching for information on how to hire a genealogist, and because it's an expensive proposition. So this kind of opened my mind to, there's a big opportunity there that I could be putting some of that content out in the world and picking up, people through SEO. And also, if I think about it as establishing credibility or sharing client success stories, like you mentioned, that there's just a lot more opportunity with it that could be beneficial, that will lead eventually to sales than I was initially thinking. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. That's super exciting. I can't wait to hear how this goes. I feel like I want like a 6-month check-in with everybody. Let me know how it goes. I'm so excited for each of you. All right, who else? Anybody else want to chime in? Going once? Going twice? All right, then we are going to bring today to a close. Thank you so much for your participation. I can't wait to see you on the 19th. That will be our last class. And then we will bring content creation for revenue generation to a close then. Thank you and have an amazing week, everybody. Take care. Bye.